"You're not on the list, and honestly, I don't think you're in the right building." That's what she said. Not quietly, not off to the side, but right there at the front desk of the Ashford Grand. Loud enough for the couple checking in beside her to hear every word. She said it to a woman in a rain-damp jacket with a canvas bag over one shoulder and no reservation printout in her hand. And she said it like she was doing the building a favor. The lobby of the Ashford Grand in downtown Vancouver smelled the way expensive lobbies always smell, something between fresh cedar and manufactured calm. The floors were marble, not the kind that tries to look like marble, but the kind that knows what it is and doesn't explain itself. The ceiling was high enough that voices carried in a way that made whispers feel like announcements. It was a Tuesday in November, rain on the windows. That particular gray light that Vancouver does better than anywhere else in the country, the kind that makes everything inside feel warmer by contrast. Maren walked through the revolving door at 4:17 in the afternoon. She was 29, 5'6", dark hair pulled into a knot that had started the day tidy and given up somewhere around Granville Street. Her jacket was olive green, not designer, not vintage, just a jacket. Her shoes were leather boots with a scuff on the left toe that she'd been meaning to deal with for 3 weeks. She carried a single canvas tote, the kind you get free at a bookstore event, with a faded logo from a literary festival in Halifax she'd gone to 2 years ago. She didn't look like she belonged in the Ashford Grand. That was the point. She crossed the lobby the way people cross lobbies when they're not performing Arrival. No pause at the door to take it in. No scan of the room for someone to notice her. Just movement, purposeful, unhurried, like someone who'd been in enough rooms that the size of them didn't register anymore. The front desk had 3 stations. 2 were occupied. The one on the left had a young man with a name tag that read Theo. Dark suit, careful posture, the kind of face that smiled before it needed to. The one in the middle had a woman named Colette, Senior Guest Relations Manager. The title was on a small brass plate beside her monitor, positioned so guests could see it. Colette wore her uniform like armor, every line pressed, every button aligned. Her hair was pulled back so tight it changed the geometry of her face. She was mid-40s, had been with the Ashford for 11 years, and had the particular confidence of someone who had confused proximity to luxury with possession of it. Maren approached Colette's station. There was one person ahead of her, a man in a charcoal suit checking in with a corporate card. Colette handled him with the smooth warmth hotels teach their staff to produce on demand. "Welcome back, Mr. Alderton. We've upgraded you to the harbor view your usual." The man smiled. Colette smiled. Everyone smiled. Then Maren stepped forward. Colette's eyes moved down before they moved up. The boots, the jacket, the tote bag, a full inventory in under 2 seconds. Her smile didn't disappear. It rearranged, the way a door doesn't close but stops opening. "Checking in?" Colette said. The warmth was gone. What replaced it was the voice hotels use when they think someone has wandered in from the street looking for a washroom. "Yes," Maren said. "Reservation under Winslow." Colette typed. Slowly. The way someone types when they're not looking for something but waiting for it not to be there. "I'm not finding anything under that name. Try M. Winslow." More typing, the same pace. "Nothing's coming up. Are you sure you're at the right property? There's a Holiday Inn on Robson that sometimes gets confused with." "I'm at the right property." Colette looked at her, not at her face. Through it. "Do you have a confirmation number?" "I do." Maren pulled her phone from her jacket pocket, opened an email and held it toward the screen. Colette glanced at it the way someone glances at a flyer they've already decided not to read. "That could be from any booking platform," Colette said. "I'll need to verify it manually. It might take a while." There were 6 people in the lobby close enough to hear this exchange. 2 of them looked over. One of them, a woman in a cream blazer, raised her eyebrows at her companion but said nothing. "I'll wait," Maren said. "You can have a seat over there." Colette gestured toward a bench near the elevator bank. Not the lobby seating with the leather chairs and the complimentary sparkling water. The bench. The one near the service corridor that smelled faintly of cleaning products. Maren didn't argue. She walked to the bench, sat down, set her tote beside her and waited. She didn't pull out her phone. She didn't look impatient. She just sat, watching the lobby the way someone watches a documentary they're taking notes on. Theo at the next station had seen the entire exchange. He'd finished with his guest and was reorganizing his desk, which didn't need reorganizing because he was stalling. He'd worked at the Ashford for 14 months. He was 23, from a small town outside of Kamloops, the kind of place where you held doors for strangers and meant it. He'd taken this job because he loved the idea of hospitality, the real kind. The kind where you make someone feel like they matter for the exact duration they're standing in front of you. He watched Colette return to her screen. Not searching, just scrolling. He watched Marin sitting on the bench. He waited 2 minutes, which felt like 6, and then he walked over. "Hi," he said. "I'm Theo. I work the front desk. Can I help you with anything while you wait?" Marin looked Taz. Not uncomfortable, just real. Like she was cataloging something she hadn't expected. "I'm fine," she said. "Just waiting on my reservation." Theo glanced back at Colette, then at Marin. Sometimes our system does that thing where it files confirmations under the booking source instead of the guest name. "I could take a look from my terminal if you want." Marin studied him. "You don't have to do that." "I know," he said, "but you're standing in our lobby and you shouldn't be waiting on a bench." She gave him the confirmation number. He walked back to his station, typed it in, and found the reservation in under 30 seconds. A suite. The Brockton suite. Top floor, 4 nights. Prepaid in full. He blinked. Then he looked at the payment source and blinked again. He printed the key cards without saying a word, walked back to Marin and handed them to her in the small leather folder the Ashford used for its premium rooms. "Brockton suite," he said quietly. 14th floor. "You're all set. Thank you, Theo. Do you need help with luggage?" "This is all I brought." She lifted the tote bag. Something about the way she said it made him pause. Not the words, the calm underneath them. Like someone who had packed light on purpose. Not because she had to, but because what she was carrying wasn't the kind of thing that fit in a suitcase. Marin walked toward the elevator. Colette saw her moving with key cards in hand, and stood up slightly behind her desk, mouth half open, like she wanted to ask a question but couldn't figure out which one. Marin didn't look back. The Brockton suite had floor-to-ceiling windows facing the harbor. The rain made the glass look like it was crying in slow motion. The room was the kind of large that whispers instead of shouts. Neutral tones, real wood, the particular silence of rooms that cost more per night than some people's rent. Marin set her bag on the bed, walked to the window, and stood there for a long time. She wasn't admiring the view, she was thinking. She'd done this 4 times now. 4 properties. Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, and now Vancouver. Same routine. Arrive alone, dress plain, carry nothing that signals status. See what happens before anyone knows. See who the hotel becomes when it thinks nobody's watching. She'd bought the Ashford Grand 8 months ago. Part of a portfolio acquisition that included 11 properties across Canada. The deal had been handled through a holding company. Attorneys, layers of paperwork, designed to keep her name out of the press until the transition was complete. The staff didn't know. The general manager knew only that new ownership existed, not who it was. Colette certainly didn't know. And that was the experiment. Marin changed into dry clothes, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened her laptop. She had 3 hours before the evening began. Downstairs, Theo was restocking the welcome water station near the concierge desk. Colette walked past him without stopping and said, low and quick, "Next time, don't override my process. If a guest can't produce proper documentation, they wait." Theo didn't respond immediately. Then he said, carefully, "She had a valid confirmation. I just looked it up. I was handling it. She was sitting on a bench." Colette stopped walking. She turned. The look she gave him was the particular look that managers give to junior staff when they want to remind them of the distance between positions without using words. "Theo," she said, "I've been here 11 years. I know what belongs in this hotel." He didn't say what he was thinking, but his face said most of it. At 6:30 that evening, Marin came down to the hotel restaurant. She'd changed into dark jeans and a simple black sweater. No jewelry, no makeup beyond what she'd been wearing all day. She looked like someone meeting a friend for dinner, not someone who owned the building she was eating in. The restaurant, Linden, was the Ashford's signature dining room. White tablecloths, small candles, the kind of quiet that costs money. The host, a man named Philippe, greeted her at the entrance. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "I don't. Is there a table for one?" Philippe checked his screen. We're quite full tonight. I have a table near the kitchen if that's fine. He walked her past the window seats, past the booths with the harbor view, past the table where a couple was drinking wine that cost more than her jacket, and seated her at a two-top beside the swinging kitchen door. Every time a server pushed through, there was a gust of warm air and the sound of plates being stacked. Marin opened the menu. She ordered a bowl of the seafood chowder and a glass of the house white. Not the Chablis, not the Sancerre. The house white, the one the menu listed without a name because it didn't need one. Her server was a woman named Isabel. Mid-30s, short auburn hair, steady hands. The kind of energy that suggested she'd been on her feet for hours, but hadn't let it reach her face. She brought the wine with a small smile that was genuine in the way you can always tell. The chowder's really good tonight, Isabel said. Chef did something different with the fennel. Marin smiled. Thanks for the heads up. It was a small thing, a nothing thing. The kind of thing that wouldn't appear on a customer satisfaction survey, but it was the kind of thing that tells you everything about the person delivering it. The chowder came. It was good. The fennel was noticeable. Marin ate slowly, watched the room, listened to conversations she wasn't part of. At the table nearest her, a man was telling his wife about a meeting that had gone badly. At the booth by the window, two women were laughing about something on a phone screen. The restaurant hummed with the particular energy of people who felt taken care of. Then Colette walked in. She wasn't eating. She was doing her rounds, the way senior staff sometimes walk through a property's public spaces to make sure everything meets standard. She moved through the dining room the way a hall monitor moves through a school corridor. Checking. Assessing. Not participating. She spotted Marin. The recognition was instant. The woman from the lobby. The bench. The tote bag. Colette walked to Philippe, leaned in and said something. Philippe glanced toward Marin's table, then back at Colette and shook his head slightly. Whatever he said, Colette didn't accept it. She said something else, more pointed. Philippe's expression tightened. 30 seconds later, Philippe appeared at Marin's table. I'm terribly sorry, he said, but we've had a reservation come in for this table. I'm going to need move you. Marin looked at him. Move me where? We have a lovely spot at the bar. I'm in the middle of my meal. I understand. I do apologize. It's a VIP request. Marin looked past Philippe to where Colette was standing near the host stand, watching. Not hiding it. Not even slightly. That's fine, Marin said. She picked up her chowder, her wine, her napkin, and moved herself to the bar without waiting for assistance. She sat on the stool at the far end, set her bowl down, and continued eating. Isabel saw the whole thing. She'd been coming back with a bread basket and watched Philippe relocate a guest who was mid-meal so the table could sit empty for a reservation that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. She put the bread basket down at the service station and walked to the bar. I'm sorry about that, she said quietly. That wasn't right. Marin looked at her. It wasn't. Can I get you anything? Dessert's on me. I mean, not technically, but I'll figure it out. You don't have to do that. I know. But you were eating fennel chowder by a kitchen door, and now you're at a bar, and neither of those were your choice. Marin almost laughed. Not quite. But the corner of her mouth moved in a way that was close. I'll take the dessert, she said. Isabel brought the crème brûlée. She'd added a small shortbread cookie on the side that wasn't on the menu. Chef stash, she whispered. Don't tell anyone. Marin ate it slowly. It was perfect. She went back to her room at 8:45. She sat at the desk, opened a document on her laptop, and began typing notes. Detailed, specific, time-stamped. Every interaction, every tone of voice, every moment where the hotel had been what it promised, and every moment where it hadn't. She typed for 40 minutes without stopping. Then she made a phone call. It's Marin. I need the transition team here tomorrow. Full leadership meeting at 2. Yes, here. The Ashford. No, don't tell them who's coming. Just tell them ownership is sending a representative. She paused, and pulled the employee files for the guest relations department. All of them. The next morning, Marin went downstairs at 7:15 for coffee. The lobby was quiet the way hotel lobbies are in the early hours. A few business travelers moving fast. A couple with suitcases heading for checkout. The smell of fresh coffee from somewhere nearby. Theo was at the desk. He looked like he'd been there since 6. He saw Marin and nodded with the kind of smile that remembers yesterday and doesn't pretend it didn't happen. Good morning, he said. Coffee's set up in the lounge if you want the good stuff. They just put out fresh pastries, too. Thanks, Theo. She poured herself a cup, sat in one of the leather chairs, and watched the lobby come alive. Staff arriving for shifts. The housekeeping team moving through with carts. A man arguing quietly with his phone near the elevator. At 9, Colette arrived. Full uniform, same precision, same posture. She walked past Marin without acknowledgement, which was fine. She went to her station and began her day. At 9:15, a man arrived in a suit that cost more than Marin's entire wardrobe. Colette was on him immediately. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Ashford Grand. How can I make your stay exceptional? The voice was warm, the posture was open, the smile was full. Everything she hadn't been yesterday. Marin watched, took a sip of her coffee, and thought about something her grandmother used to say. You learn the truth about a person not by how they treat their equals, but by how they treat the people they think don't count. At 1:45 in the afternoon, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the hotel entrance. The doorman, who had seen a lot in his years at the Ashford, straightened up in a way that suggested this was outside his normal range. 8 people entered the lobby. 6 were in suits. 2 were carrying document cases. They moved with the coordinated efficiency of people who had done this before and didn't need to talk about it. Among them was a woman named Valerie Chen, who was the COO of Winslow Hospitality Group, and who had the particular energy of someone who was very good at her job and very tired of people who weren't. The general manager of the Ashford, a man named Gerald, appeared from his office. He'd received the call that morning. Ownership representative. Full leadership meeting, 2 o'clock. He didn't know what it was about, but he could feel it was large. He shook hands with Valerie and led the group toward the executive conference room on the 2nd floor. At 1:55, Marin stood up from the leather chair. She'd been sitting there for nearly 5 hours, drinking coffee, reading on her phone, invisible in the way that people become invisible when they don't perform importance. She walked toward the elevator, rode it to the 2nd floor, and entered the conference room through the side door. Gerald saw her first. His face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, confusion again. Then something that looked a lot like the moment you realize you've been reading the map upside down. Valerie stood. Everyone, this is Marin Winslow, founder and CEO of Winslow Hospitality Group, owner of this hotel and 10 others across the country. The room was silent. Not the silence of surprise, the silence of recalculation. Every person at that table was rearranging the last 24 hours in their head. Marin sat down at the head of the table. She was still wearing the black sweater from last night. She'd added a blazer, dark gray, simple, the only concession to formality. Her tote bag was on the floor beside her chair. I checked in yesterday, she said. Under my own name, Winslow. I walked through the lobby with a canvas bag and wet boots. I looked like I didn't belong here. No one moved. I want to tell you what happened, she told them. Not dramatically, not with anger, just clearly. The way a doctor reads a chart. The reservation that couldn't be found. The bench near the service corridor. The comment about the Holiday Inn. The dinner at Linden, the table by the kitchen. The forced relocation mid-meal for a VIP reservation that materialized from nowhere. She told it in order, with specifics, without editorializing. The room was very still. I also want to tell you what else happened, she said. A front desk agent named Theo found my reservation in 30 seconds, when it had been conveniently lost for 10 minutes. He walked it to me personally. He told me I shouldn't be waiting on a bench in my own lobby. She paused. A server named Isabel noticed I'd been moved from a table I didn't choose in the first place. She apologized for something that wasn't her fault. She brought me dessert with a cookie from the chef's personal supply, because she decided that kindness was more important than protocol. She looked around the table. I bought this hotel because I believed it could be the best property in Vancouver. Not the most expensive, not the most exclusive, the best. And the difference between expensive and best is entirely about how people are treated when they walk through the door. She turned to Gerald. I need your full guest relations team in this room in 15 minutes. It took 12. Colette walked in first. She was still in uniform, still pressed, still precise. Behind her came Philippe, then 2 junior staff members who had been on shift the day before. Theo came in last. He stood near the wall, hands at his sides, not sure why he was there but not asking. Colette saw Marin at the head of the table and stopped. Not the way a person stops when they're surprised. The way a person stops when the ground shifts and they haven't decided yet whether to keep standing. "Sit down, please," Marin said. They sat. "Yesterday I checked into this hotel as a guest. No title, no advance notice, no entourage. Just a person with a reservation and a bag." She looked at Colette directly. "And from the moment I reached the front desk, I was treated as though I didn't deserve to be here." Colette's jaw tightened. Her hands, folded on the table, pressed together until the knuckles whitened. "My reservation was ignored despite a valid confirmation number. I was redirected to a bench beside the service corridor. I was told in front of other guests that I might be looking for the Holiday Inn." Marin paused. "In the evening, I was seated at the worst table in the restaurant, and then moved to the bar mid-meal on a fabricated VIP request." Colette opened her mouth. I know," Marin said. "I was there. The room was so quiet that someone's phone vibrating in a pocket sounded like a fire alarm. The people who stay in this hotel pay for a certain experience, not because of what they're wearing or what car they arrived in. Because they're here. That's all the qualification that should matter. And especially the ones who don't look the part. Because those are the guests who are watching most carefully. Those are the ones who'll remember exactly how they were treated and tell everyone they know." She looked at Colette, held it. "Colette, effective immediately, your position at the Ashford Grand is terminated. HR has your paperwork." The sound Colette made wasn't loud. It was the kind of exhale that carries everything inside it. Her face changed the way faces change, when 11 years of certainty dissolve in a single sentence. "Please," Colette said. "I've given this hotel." "You were given opportunities," Marin said. Her voice wasn't unkind. It was level. "At the desk, you could have looked up my reservation. In the lobby, you could have offered a real seat. At dinner, you could have left a guest in peace. Each time, you chose differently. Each time." Colette looked at the table. Her hand came up to her face, not covering it, just touching it, like she was checking whether she was still there. Marin turned to Philippe. "The relocation in Linden, whose idea was that?" Philippe cleared his throat. "Colette asked me to. She said the guest was." He stopped. "Was what?" "Not suitable for the dining room." The words sat in the room like something spilled. "Philippe, you'll be placed on administrative review. 2 weeks. If the findings support reinstatement with retraining, that option will be available. If they don't, they don't." Philippe nodded once. He looked like a man who had just been handed an invoice for something he'd been getting away with for free. Then Marin looked at Theo. He was still standing near the wall. He hadn't moved. "You found my reservation when it was easier not to look," she said. "You walked it to me when you could have left it at your screen. You told me I shouldn't be waiting on a bench. Which meant you noticed I was there and you decided that mattered." Theo's expression didn't change, but his posture did. Something in his shoulders released. "You said something yesterday," Marin continued. "You said, you're standing in our lobby and you shouldn't be waiting on a bench. I want you to know that one sentence told me more about this hotel than anything in the investor prospectus." She looked at Valerie. "Theo moves into guest experience coordination. New position. Reports to the GM directly. Full compensation adjustment." Theo's mouth opened slightly, then closed. He nodded. "And Isabel from Linden," Marin said. "I want her in the meeting tomorrow morning. She's being moved to front-of-house leadership for the restaurant. Same thing. Compensation adjustment. She'll help us figure out what the dining experience should actually feel like." Gerald was writing everything down. His pen hadn't stopped moving for 5 minutes. Marin stood. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said to the room. "I didn't buy this hotel to fire people. I bought it because when I walked past it 3 years ago, before I could afford to walk into it, I thought it was the most beautiful building I'd ever seen. And I told myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd make sure the inside matched the outside." She picked up her tote bag. "We're not there yet, but we're going to be." She walked out of the room. The door closed behind her with the soft click that expensive doors make, the kind that sounds like a period at the end of a sentence. Colette stayed in her chair for a long time. The room emptied around her. Gerald came back in at some point and said something she didn't register. Valerie left paperwork on the table in front of her. Colette didn't touch it. She sat in the conference room on the second floor of a hotel. She no longer worked at and stared at the window where the rain was still falling. As it always is in Vancouver. As if nothing had happened, as if the city didn't care. Which of course it didn't, because cities never do. 2 months later, Theo stood at the front of a training room on the 3rd floor. 16 new hires, notebooks, nervous energy, the particular hope that comes with a first week at a job you actually want. He had notes. He didn't look at them. This job is simple, he said. People walk through the door. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they do. You don't know what their day looked like before they got here. That's not your business. He paused. Your business is this. For the time they're standing in front of you, they matter. Not because of the room they booked or the car they drove up in, because they're here. That's it. That's the whole thing. A woman in the back row raised her hand. What if they don't look like they can afford to be here? Theo almost smiled. Especially then. The ones who don't look the part are paying closer attention than anyone. Down the hall, in the office that used to belong to a regional VP who'd since retired, Isabel was reviewing the new service guidelines for Linden. She'd rewritten them twice. The first version was too corporate. The second was too casual. The third was right. It was 4 pages long and the first line read, "Every guest who sits down is telling you they trust you with their evening. Don't waste it." On the 14th floor, the Brockton suite was empty. Marin had checked out that morning, flown back to Toronto, and was already on a call about the Montreal property. She'd left a note at the front desk handwritten, on hotel stationery. It was addressed to Theo. It said, "You were right. No one should wait on that bench. I'm having it removed. Thank you for saying something when it was easier not to." M.W. Theo found it at the start of his shift, read it twice, and put it in his jacket pocket. He kept it there for a long time. Not because it was from the owner of the hotel, because it was from someone who'd been sitting alone in a lobby, invisible to everyone who should have seen her. And he'd walked over. That was all he'd done. He'd walked over. 6 months later, the Ashford Grand won Vancouver's Hospitality Service Award for the first time in its 40-year history. Marin didn't attend the ceremony. She sent Theo and Isabel instead. They stood on stage together, holding a plaque that was heavier than it looked. And when the photographer asked to say something, Isabel said, "Every guest who walks through the door is telling you they trust you. That's the job." Theo didn't say anything. He just stood there, smiling, thinking about a woman in a wet jacket with a canvas bag, who'd sat on a bench near a service corridor and waited. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to see if anyone would come. Someone did. And 3 years later, when Winslow Hospitality Group was named one of the top employers in the country, a journalist asked Marin what the company's philosophy was. She thought about it for a moment, then said, "Hire the people who walk over." The journalist asked her what that meant. Marin smiled. "The right people already know."